All right, so a little bit of background on myself. As Sandra said, my name is Heather Heward. I have had a passion for fire for a long time. My dad was a firefighter, a wildland firefighter. Growing up as a kid, he would leave on what are called project fires, these long-term fires, and he'd come back with a whole bundle full of junk food that we would never get otherwise. So my first associations with wildfire were junk food and wildfire, and just started my relationship off really well. After high school, I started as a wildland firefighter on the Olympic National Forest. I worked on an engine there, and then I spent a total of 8 years as a wildland firefighter in a variety of capacities. I was on a hand crew for a couple years in central Washington. I was on a heli-rappel crew in central Idaho. And then I ended with doing several years on what's called a wildland fire use module, or a fire module now, which are 10-person crews that are intended to go to remote areas and work on fires that theoretically you're using your brain a little bit more to manage fire rather than just your back and your arms. And then after my time as a wildland firefighter, I started to really get connected with Nature Conservancy and doing events that are called training exchanges, where they go to different places in the country and the world actually, and they connect people that are hoping to get additional fire training with people that would like to apply some fire on their ground in a safe and effective way, and bringing those two things together. And that's what I really found my passion for: prescribed burning, or it's also called managed fire or controlled fire. And I started at the University of Idaho as an instructor in 2012. I actually did my undergraduate and my master's there at the University of Idaho as well, studying wildfires and the ways that satellites view fires. And I began teaching their fire classes, and I am the faculty advisor for the Student Association for Fire Ecology, or the SAFE Club. Good name, right? SAFE Club, Fire Ecology. Hopefully it makes the people at risk a little bit less leery about our activities that we perform as a SAFE Club, doing safety things. So at the University of Idaho, I teach wildland fire management, fire and fuel modeling, and the prescribed burning lab, amongst other classes. In the fall, I teach the prescribed burning lab, where we write burn plans and we go onto the experimental forest and we implement the burns that are used for fuel reduction and wildland fire hazard reduction, and also for ecological purposes. So I have started to develop, as we all do, we go through these opportunities to learn and grow throughout our life, and you define yourself over and over again. When I started out at the University of Idaho as a freshman, with this fine lady here is one of my professors in the class that was about fire. You think you understand what something is. You get introduced to a small concept, and all of a sudden you think you know everything. Learning that's like the most dangerous time in someone's life, when you know just enough to know to get yourself in trouble. And as I started to grow and to learn more, I recognized that certainly there's a whole spectrum, a whole history of things that are going on in our natural world that have been going on forever and that will continue to go on far beyond when we're here, and to recognize what this individual moment looks like in our existence and what we can do about it. I feel my role right now is an educator, and I'm very passionate about what experiences I give to my students and how I influence their perceptions, or I give them the opportunities to change their perceptions or learn and grow in different ways. So I'm here to talk to you about wildfire and climate, and that will fit into lots of other topics that kind of impact that. So let's take a little bit of discussion here. What do you guys know about wildfire right now? As the public, it's informative for me to know what your perceptions of fire are in our American culture.
They're getting worse.
They're getting worse, yes.
Well, the point of the whole thing seems to be that while fires are getting worse, we're also unwilling to spend much money for the Forest Service, for Idaho Fish and Game, for other entities that are responsible for this, so as to do the things that they say are needed to do, like fuel reduction,
Yeah,
that sort of thing. So we want it fixed, but we don't want to spend any money on doing it.
yeah,
And the Forest Service, for instance, is now spending over half of its total budget fighting fires,
yeah,
as opposed to trail maintenance, fuel, whatever
Yeah.
else.
sure. Right here, yes.
I'd like to hear your ideas using your brain instead of your brawn in controlling fires. And fires aren't all bad. I heard on the radio this morning that elk love fires because it increases their food supply, so they stay out of fields and stuff like that. I think they are getting more of it. Is there a way we can control those for a greater benefit?
Absolutely. Go over here and then I'll kind of address that question.
Well, I was talking to someone similar to yourself in Corvallis at the University of Oregon State, and he was talking about how complex the whole subject is. There's no single fix on any of it. You know, it's not just prescribed burns, it's not just controlling where people build and making sure that people adhere to fire safety and building at or near, you know, forest areas. And they've got huge maps of how fires move through cities that sit near or suburban areas that sit near forested areas.
Yeah.
And where they ignore it all with the prescribed safety pieces. But it's hugely complex, so I think that's important.
Yeah, so I'll jump in there and then and I would love, we'll take more questions and whatnot as well. So maybe a little bit of fire history. Let's go back in time a little bit. And what we understand in time, right? So there's lots of scientific papers out there that'll talk to you about what happened before humans and then during humans, and we do our best to reconstruct. So everything that we know, we know, I'll say quotations, right? But the things that we think from best science. So we recognize through climatological records, through ice core records, that fire existed on our landscape for a long time. It's always been there. You got vegetation, you got oxygen, you got fire. It just happens. Because fire exists on the landscape, then plants and animals want to live there still, and so they figure out ways to live with the fire that exists there. The strategies that they develop vary. Sometimes they survive fire by not burning. Like ponderosa pine tree has thick bark, self-pruning branches, and really is fire adapted. It does not, if it gets frequent low-intensity fires, it can survive those really effectively. Some plants like the manzanita, the chaparral ecosystem, that is a hot potato strategy where I will receive this fire, I will burn all of my above ground biomass as quickly as I can and pass that hot potato on to the next one so that my root crown is not scorched and I can still resprout. And then some, like the lodgepole pine, grow and are meant to just really burn and burn all the way, and then their seedlings have a good place to grow. That's their response to fire. So we recognize through the adaptations of plants and animals that fire has absolutely been a part of our ecosystems. Now, where that line is between natural ignition from lightning versus human ignition from Native American use, there's where we get fuzzy. Now, the Native Americans have used fire for as long as we have records for, and so the use of Native American fire has been persistent enough that it likely had a significant influence on vegetation, just like lightning fires do. So we recognize, again, in that the general accepted idea is that fire is a natural part of our ecosystem, and that when it becomes, now in our problem time with fire, is that it is butting up against the resources that, the ways that we intend to use the land and the resources that we have on the land. Fire threatens those things. So that's hence the issue with fire. And it is complicated because, goodness, man, wouldn't that be great? In all the problems of life, really, like this is a human, it's a world human thing. There just isn't a solution that's like, oh, that's the one. We just need to thin more, or we need to burn more, or we need to move out of the urban interface. We all we can do is do research to find out the best, what we have seen in some evidence of being effective, and do more of that, and then observe more. That takes money and investment. How can you apply these treatments on the ground and show that they're worthwhile before you can get money to apply the treatments on the ground? And it's complicated. Fortunately, there are places that are out there that are doing the work that the rest of us might recognize as this is the best we got. And we have people that are starting to implement treatments on their landscapes at large scales. They don't know for sure how effective it's going to be, but it's the best practice that we got, and now we have some opportunities to see how effective that is once those treatments are put to the test. So I might pull back a little bit more and talk, just do some trends for you from what we recognize right now in science as the effects of wildfire and climate change. So first off, climate change. I think that we're all pretty comfortable with that as a term, recognizing that it's not global warming, it's not hotter necessarily everywhere, it's not drier everywhere, it's a change. Just like we expect the climate to change naturally, so climates we recognize that climate has always changed. And those fluctuations in climate have always corresponded with changes in the fire pattern at the time. What we're seeing now, though, is the rate of which those things are changing, and also the fact that we, as the human occupiers of this world, are impacted more by those changes. So when changes have happened in the past, there were a lot less people to vote on it than there are now. And so we are definitely put into the face of these changes. So this is a paper that's written by Peckney and Schneidel in 2010 called Driving Forces of Global Wildfires Over the Past Millennium and Forthcoming Century. Does a good job in a relatively summarized way, 2 pages, right? That's like pretty handleable as far as research paper goes. I actually wanted it, when I was done reading it, I thought, I kind of would like that to be longer. I think I need to know more about this topic. They talk a lot about the drivers of the fire regimes, and what we recognize through climatological records of pre-European development. We have precipitation-driven fire patterns where they recognize that there's, let's say, a dip in precipitation and an increase in fires. That's the drivers. They're precipitation driver of fire. Fire means when we can use precipitation to predict how the fires were. They correspond.